Where is everybody? There we go. Enoch, good morning. Hey guys, good morning.
Morning.
You got your slides for chapter 11?
Yes, sir.
Cool, cool. Like a calendar. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Ino. I just completed a survey. Okay, a survey qualified for iPhone 11 Pro. Okay, and I'm supposed to enter my Visa card details. Okay, so I got a little bit alarmed, and that's why I called to confirm if it's really from you. Yes, so I just answered the survey, and then after that, yeah, but it came with AT&T, your brand, and all of that. And then after that, I was told that I've won an iPhone, but I should enter my card details, and then I'll get, and then it will be delivered to me. Meanwhile, I'm being charged $19, like 97 cents. So that's why I just decided to confirm. 601
John.
4731735. Yeah. Okay.
I'll be right back.
Okay, no problem. Okay. For free state department, no. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. 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 All right. Okay. Thank you. Okay. No, 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 no. I'm okay. I'm okay. All right. Thank you. No, I'm grateful. Thank you. Bye. Okay, you're welcome. You too.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, Doc.
I've got time for the class to start, so we may have somebody join us in a little bit. We're looking at, your author calls it capital budgeting basics. It's actually capital budgeting methods. You know, in the last chapter, chapter 10, we came up with a cost of capital, the hurdle rate, the required rate of return for projects to be acceptable. You're going to see it used with what we cover in this chapter. Now we're actually going to look at 4 capital budgeting methods. Whoops. With each method, all we're looking for is a thumbs up or a thumbs down. But each of these methods profile the project differently, as you'll see. Now, the first of these methods, the payback, is the oldest capital budgeting method. It answers a very simple question. When do we get our money back? That's what the payback is. To look at all of these techniques, we're going to, I'm sorry, my voice. We're going to look at 2 projects. Actually, we're going to focus on project S. And then I'm going to make up another project on the whiteboard that we'll work with. For example, for project S, you shell out 1,000 now and expect to get back 500 a year from now, 400 a year later, 300 a year later, 100 the last year. If you want to call these millions, for corporations, they would be in millions. The first method, the payback method, is simply the number of years required to recover the initial outlay. This is as simplistic as it can get. We even ignore the time value of money. For example, for project S, our cost is 1,000. So the question is, When do we expect to recover, get back that 1,000? We expect to get 500 in the first year. When you calculate the payback, you need to set up another column called cumulative cash inflows. So after 1 year, you've recovered 500. After 2 years, you've recovered a total of 900. After 2 years, have we reached our payback point? Have we recovered the 1,000? No, not yet. How much more do we need to recover beyond this 900 to recover the cost? Another, what, 100? Would we have to go all the way through year 3 to recover that remaining 100? No. We'd only have to go a third of the way through. So our payback for this project would be 2 1/3 years. Now, companies that use the payback have a cutoff. If the payback is too long, they turn down the project. They like a quick payback. For instance, for our company, the decision rule is if the payback's 3 years or less, we accept. If it's over 3 years, we turn it down. So what would be our decision with Project S? Remember the payback, sorry about all those lines, for S is 2 1/3 years. So is that quick enough? Is it within the 3-year cutoff? Yeah. So we would accept. Using the payback method, we would accept Project S. It's believed that the quicker the payback, the shorter the payback, the higher the rate of return on the project, the more desirable the project. So for example, whoops, sorry. Excuse me for one thing here. I forgot to open my whiteboard. Okay. Oh. A little bit of housekeeping I forgot about. There it is. Great. Huh. Okay. I've run into a glitch I haven't run into before. We'll use the Microsoft whiteboard. Pardon me, the Zoom whiteboard. Actually, I don't want to do that. Sorry, guys. If you will bear with me for just a minute. Okay. Now let's see if it'll let me do this. Yeah, glitch resolved. Let's say we've got the following project.
Yes, sir.
Project Z.
Mr. Claude,
One of our services is down. Are you kidding me? All right, we'll try that again. Sorry, guys. I'm having a glitch with my software of all things. No, that's a Zoom. Whiteboard, that's not what I want. Sorry. This is what I want. Why in the world is that read only? All right, I messed up. We will go with the Zoom whiteboard and hope it's stable. All right, we're looking at Project Z. Here are the cash flows for Z. It's a 5-year project. Z costs $2,000 to implement. Then it's expected to bring in cash inflows of $400 a year for 3 years, and then $1,000 a year for 2 years. Are you with me on this? Now, to find the payback, we want to set up a cumulative cash inflow. And we're going to ignore the cost. Whoops. That's interesting. We'll put the cost up here. Okay, so our inflows, after 1 year, we've recovered 400. After 2 years, we've recovered how much? 800, then 1,200. After 3 years, have we recovered the cost of the project? No. Do we need to go all the way through year 4? No. So the payback for Project Z would be these first 3 years plus a fraction of year 3. How much more do we need to recover after 3 years to reach our payback point? What did the project cost? $2,000. After 3 years, we've recovered 1,200 of that. So how much more do we need? Another
800.
Another 800. So the payback for Project Z would be 3.8 years. If we use the same decision rule Would we accept Project Z? No. Boy. I've learned a valuable lesson this morning. We would reject Project Z because the payback. It's too long.
Mr. Cook.
Ma'am.
Well, I wanted to ask you, like, when you say like 3.8 years, can we, for example, say like 3 years in like months?
Well, we're going to express it in years.
Okay.
The payback is always expressed in years. You'll find your author does that. I do it throughout my slides.
Okay.
8/10 of a year would be 10.
Yeah, it's
20
9.6 months.
But we'll always do it in years.
Okay. I asked because on high school I was doing it with that, so.
And our cutoff is 3 years. So this project is simply too long. It'd be rejected. Do you follow what I'm doing with the payback? I tell you what, I want to try an experiment that may backfire. Well, no, I won't. It would be. Okay. Any questions on the payback? Okay. I want to use the same project again for our other methods. I'm trying to save some writing. Okay. So with the payback, what are its strengths and weaknesses? The good thing about the payback is it's easy to calculate. It's easy to explain. What is the payback? It's a number of years required to recover your initial investment. But it also serves as a proxy for risk. The longer the payback, the greater the risk. With a longer payback, we have greater risk. The longer you have to wait, the longer you have to wait to recover your initial, the more time you're giving for something to go wrong that you've not planned on. Okay. What's bad about it? We totally ignored time value of money. Enoch, could you mute your microphone, please?
Yes, Doc.
Thank you. The payback ignores the time value of money. At no point did we pull out our financial calculators and take the time value of money into account. For example, with the problem we were working, what if I changed the cash flows where, oh, I don't know. What if the cash flows were changed to 0, 0, and 1200? Now what's our payback? It's the same. It's still 3 years plus a fraction of the 4th year. But wouldn't you rather have more of that money sooner? Sure. The payback ignores that. It ignores the time value of money. Another weakness of the payback, it ignores the more distant cash flows. Go back to our problem. What if this last cash flow, instead of 1,000, what if it were 100,000? Now what's the payback? And let me change the other figures back. This is the original problem. Now what's the payback? After 3 years, you've recovered 1,200. The payback would still be 3 years plus a fraction of the last one. It's unchanged. Guys, I apologize. I failed to open the Microsoft Whiteboard, which works so much better than the Zoom. But the key point is, these cash flows that are further off in the future, payback ignores. Its sole focus is on when do we get our investment back, and it ignores everything beyond that point. For this reason, the payback puts long-term projects at a disadvantage. All right, let me clean this up a little bit. And finally, final weakness. There's nothing about the payback decision rule that maximizes shareholder wealth. We're supposed to make decisions that cause the stock price to go up. The payback decision rule is not designed to do that. It's arbitrary. Each company adapts its own. The American textile industry for many years used a payback cutoff of 3 years. Why? Because everyone else did. There was no logic behind it. So, we've covered the first method, the payback method. It is rife with weaknesses. It ignores time value. It doesn't even consider all of the cash flows of the project. It ignores the more distant ones. And its decision rule is not designed to maximize shareholder wealth. So the short answer is, it's a lousy method. Why do we use it? It's been used forever, and companies still like to look at it. If for nothing else, use it as a proxy for risk. Longer paybacks mean riskier projects. Why? The more time you wait to recover your investment, the greater the chance you're giving to unforeseen events to arise that can wreck the project. Nobody saw this coronavirus coming in corporate industry until the last minute. So, for example, a lot of airlines may have analyzed buying new planes, used these capital budgeting methods, gotten a thumbs up, and now they can't use them. So the longer the payback, the more time you're giving for unforeseen events to arise. So the longer the payback, the riskier the project. Now, the second method we're going to cover, your author covers this second, so I do, of the 4 methods, but it happens this is the best method. It's called net present value. And net present value is defined as the present value of all project cash flows, where you keep track of the signs. Or you could also say, which is the same thing, that it's the present value of the inflows minus the present value of the outflows. Now, what is net present value? It's a dollar figure that represents what we think the project will do to total shareholder wealth. The total value of all of the company's stock on the market is called its market capitalization. Market cap. It's the total market value of all of a company's shares. You know, in accounting, they may measure size by total assets. In finance, we measure the size of a company by its market cap. By the way, which company do you think is the largest company in the world based on market cap? Well, I can tell you one company that was for years was Apple. the total value, market value of all of its shares. If you took the market price per share and multiplied by the number of shares outstanding, Apple had the biggest market cap. Now, has Amazon taken over? I don't know. Here is another hilarious point about our measure of size. What do you think the largest automaker in the world was based on market cap? This is where you guess, guys. Somebody wake up, give me a response, name an automaker that you think is the biggest. Everybody left. I'm going to wait you out.
Toyota.
Who?
Toyota.
Toyota? Nowhere near. Oddly. Say again.
Yeah.
Guys, believe it or not, the largest automaker based on market cap was not Toyota, it was not General Motors, it was not Volkswagen. Oddly, it was Tesla.
Oh, really? Wow.
The total market value of their shares, if you took the number of shares times the price per share, they were bigger than anybody, any other automaker. So it's kind of a weird way to measure the size of a company, but okay. So what is NPV for a project? It's how much we think it will affect the company's market cap. If the NPV for a project is 150 million, we think it will cause the total market value of a company's shares to go up by 150 million. Key point is if the NPV is positive, we believe it will cause share prices to go up. If it's negative, we believe it would cause share prices to go down. So our decision rule is very simple. Come on. The decision rule, if the NPV is simply positive, we accept the project. So, for example, let's go back to Project S. Let's assume the WACC for Project S is 10%. When you calculate NPV, the WACC is your discount rate, your time value of money. If you recall back in chapter 5, your time value of money chapter, you needed to use the CF key for uneven cash flows. And Project S has uneven cash flows. So this is how you would put the cash flows for Project S into your calculator if you have a BA2 plus. Shift clear out all old values. It prompts you for the cash flow at time 0. So you put in 1,000, but you make it negative. Enter, down arrow. Then you put in for each succeeding year the cash inflows. They each occur one time, which is why you hit this down arrow a second time. If you hit 500, enter down arrow, it then prompts you for the frequency of the 500. It's asking you how many times in a row does that 500 occur. The default is once, so you hit the down arrow, the 500 occurs one time. After you get all of your cash flows in, then you hit NPV. It prompts you for your discount rate. For this project, the cost of capital is 10%, so we put in 10, enter, down arrow, compute. And we get an NPV of a positive 78.8, which suggests we do what? Accept the project or turn it down? If it's positive, what do we do? Accept. If you have the HP10B2, these are your keystrokes. Shift clear all, then start throwing cash flows into the CF key. You make the first one negative. Then you put your discount rate in I and hit shift NPV. And of course you get the same answer. So just for grins, let's assume project Z has a WACC of 12%. If you use the BA2 plus, you'd begin by clearing out all the old cash flows. Then it would prompt you for the cash flow at time 0, which would be 2,000. You'd make it negative, hit enter, down arrow. Then your next cash flow is 400, but in this case, it's good to take advantage of the compact notation. When it asks you for the 2,000, it shows C0. For the 400, it was C01, I think. If you hit enter or down arrow, then it asks you for the F01 frequency. It's asking how many of these 400s do you have in a row? We have 3. So we'd hit enter, down arrow. Then the next cash flow is 1,000. We'd hit enter, down arrow, and it prompts us for the frequency of the 1,000. And if you'll notice, we have 2 of them. So hit 2 and enter, and all your cash flows are in. So now you could hit NPV. It asks you for the discount rate, which is 12%. Hit enter, down arrow, and compute. And you'll have to let me catch up with you because I just made this problem up. And I got 163.7. what was this, Z? I got a positive 163.7. If these were in millions, then that would be in millions of dollars. If you're using the HP 10B2, first of all, you'd clear out all the old values, shift clear all, then start throwing cash flows into the CF key. The first cash flow would be 2,000. You'd make it negative. The next cash flow would be 400. And you can tell your calculator that this is occurring 3 times in a row by hitting 3, shift, N sub J. And again, you may not remember this, but the N sub J is the shift of the CF key. It is not the N in your time value of money bar, you know, where you have NIPD payment. It's a different key. Then the next cash flow is 1,000. And you can tell your calculator this occurs 2 times in a row by hitting 2. Again, shift N sub J. Then to calculate NPV, you put the discount rate in I, and then hit shift NPV. And you should get the same answer. Is anybody getting this answer with your calculator?
I do.
Cool, very good. That means I didn't mess up. Now, what are the strengths and weaknesses of the NPV? Compared to the payback, there are no weaknesses. The NPV considers all the cash flows. It considers the time value of money. Its decision rule is designed to maximize shareholder wealth. Weaknesses? None. The last method that we'll probably cover today, just for grins, is called IRR, Internal Rate of Return. You've already calculated this. Back when you calculated bond yield, you were calculating rate of return. Now, technically, it's got a wonky definition. It's defined as the value for WACC that would force the NPV to be exactly 0. Don't worry about that definition. If you were going to calculate this for project S, you put all your cash flows in just like you did to calculate NPV. This is with the BA2 plus. Then you simply hit IRR, down arrow, compute, and it gives you the IRR of the project. This is the expected rate of return. Now, what do we do with that? We compare that to the WACC, which, if I recall, for this project, we were using 10%. The WACC is the minimum required rate of return. The hurdle rate. We require at least 10%. We actually expect well above that. So what's our decision? We would accept. Our decision rule is the IRR must be greater than the WACC to accept. And in this case, it is. So we'd accept project S. Now, what about project Z that we were playing with? What would be different? We put the cash flows in exactly the same way that we did earlier, except once you've got the cash flows in, with project, pardon me, with the BA2 Plus, you would hit IRR, compute, with the HP 10B2, you simply hit shift IRR. And for our project Z, we should get an IRR of 14.7%. That's what we expect. Now, what did we require on Z? The WACC was what, 12? So we require at least 12%. We actually expect more than that. So our decision should be accept. Okay. Any questions on this? Oh yeah, let me go back to the strengths and weaknesses and get that out of the way. Strengths and weaknesses. Strengths and weaknesses for the IRR method are the same as for the NPV. Did the IRR consider the time value of money? Yes. Did it consider all of the project's cash flows, even the distant ones? Yes. Is its decision rule designed to maximize shareholder wealth? Yes. Let's try this. And first, let me add this, and then I'm going to erase it. The IRR and the NPV are always in agreement. If the NPV says accept the project, so will the IRR. If the NPV says turn down the project, so will the IRR. So what this means is, if the NPV is greater than 0, if it says accept the project, then the IRR will be greater than WACC. It will also tell us to accept the project. So just for grins, let's try one more project. Let's call it, what comes after Z? Nothing, okay. Project W. Project W has a payback cutoff of 4 years. No, sorry, 2 years. It's got a WACC of 15%. And here are its cash flows. It's a 3-year project. $1,200 investment, followed by, why not, just $500 a year. What's the payback? What's the NPV? What's the IRR? Take a minute and see what you come up with. Let me see what I come up with. Good.
Is the WAC 15%?
15%, yeah, sorry about that.
Okay, it's okay.
No, it's not. Our writing is terrible. see if I can manage something that looks a little more like 15. Oh, that's even worse. There. Did you guys get an NPV of a negative 58.4? And if it's negative,
Yes.
that means it would lower shareholder wealth. So our decision based on the NPV would be reject. If you calculate the IRR, did you guys get 12? And based on the IRR, we'd reject because we require at least 15. And we expect only 12. So based on the IRR, we would reject. Remember what I said, these two techniques are always in agreement. Any questions on this? Okay. The final method. Let me clear all this and then I'll restore it later. The final method we're going to look at is called the MIRR. Sounds like a Russian satellite, the MIR. MIRR. I was raised in the days of Sputnik, so forgive me. It too is another measure of expected return, but it is calculated differently. First, we're going to focus on how you calculate it. Then we'll talk about what the difference is. Whatever you got for an IRR, if the project was acceptable, the MIR will make the project look still acceptable, but not quite as good. It assumes the cash flows are reinvested to earn a rate equal to the cost of capital. So here are the steps. Don't worry about what that means at this point. Here are the steps. First, we find the present value of the inflows. Then we compound that lump forward so that we have the future value of the inflows. The next step is to find the present value of the outflows, but that doesn't concern you. For every project I give you on the exam, the only outflow will be at time 0. So it's already in present value form. And then we solve for the rate of return. So first of all, to find the present value of just the inflows, we throw all our cash flows into our calculator except there is no inflow at time 0. So we put in 0. I guess if we put in 0, it really doesn't matter if we make it plus or minus. So we put in just the inflows. This is for project S. And we get a present value of inflows of 1,078.8. Now that's the inflows, but in present value form. Our next step, and by the way, this is what you would do with the HP 10B2. Again, there is no cash inflow at t equals 0. So, and again, I guess this plus minus is redundant. And of course, you should get the same value, present value of inflows. Then we take that present value of inflows and we compound it forward to the last year. and we use the WACC as our interest rate. The present value of the inflows are 1,078. If we were to invest that for 4 years and earn 10%, we'd end up with 1579.50. That is the future value of the inflows. So what we've done is we've re-expressed the project as if it consists of two cash flows. The $1,000 cost, that was the cash flow at time 0. And then that 1579, which is actually the future value of the inflows. Basically, what we're saying is we invest 1,000 now, and 4 years later, we end up with 1579. So what's our rate of return? That's the MIRR. Since the MIRR is greater than the cost of capital, we accept. Remember, the MIRR is another measure of expected rate of return, and the WACC is what we require as a minimum. So if the expected rate of return is greater than the minimum we require, we accept. In the background, if you like graphics, what we're doing is compounding every cash inflow forward to the final year, adding them up, then treating this project as if it consisted of just two cash flows, the initial outlay and the future value of the inflows. Strengths and weaknesses, same as the NPV. It considers all the cash flows, it considers the time value of money, and it has a decision rule that maximizes shareholder wealth. So for example, let me make this one a little bit easier. Let's say we've got the following project, P. And the cash flows for P look like this. Pardon me, cash flows. It costs $5,000. It's got inflows of $1,300 a year. And let's say its WACC is 8%. If I wanted to find the MIRR, I could find the present value of the inflows using the BA2 plus. CF shift clear. There is no inflow at time 0. And then I've got 1300 4 years in a row. Then I could ask for the NPV, give it my cost of capital, and I get 4306. Shaping up to look like a lousy project. If you do the same with your HP10B2, you should get the same answer. So then I find the future value of the inflows with either calculator. I compound that present value forward for, what is it, 4 years, using my cost of capital as my discount rate. And I would get I get a future value of the inflows of 5858. So now I've expressed the project as consisting of two cash flows. Its cost of 5,000 and its future value of 5858. So if I had a project where I invest 5,000, I end up with 5858 after 4 years. I'd get an MIRR of 4%. And because it's less than the cost of capital, we'd reject. We require at least 8%. What we expect is only 4, so it's not good enough. Any questions? What is today? Wednesday? We will pick this up Monday. If you have no other questions, I'll let you guys go. You have a good day.